So the vehicles in GTA Online have changed quite a bit. It is safe to say that. You can look at 2013 all the way up to now being damn near 2025, and you can just see the differences, whether it be graphical changes, whether it be how the driving feels, or anything like that, how even the damage is taken by vehicles. There's a lot that has changed, and I want to talk about how each year has impacted the vehicles in GTA Online. Pretty much an evolution of them. Now let's first talk about how GTA 4's vehicles behaved, because it was much more different in that game. The physics engine was much more realistic, having vehicles have body lean. So if you were to turn left or right, the vehicle would actually lean to one side. Now the change over to GTA Online was a little bit different. The driving physics weren't as severe or anything like that. It was much more arcadey. The vehicles didn't really have body lean. It was a lot easier to drive. But some vehicles still had the same damage profile as GTA 4. You could take like the Vigero, for instance. I think that's the name of the car. It was also in GTA 4. You can damage it and you can really see the damage. So you can just take GTA 4 vehicles that are in GTA 5 and just see the different damages that they can take compared to newer vehicles in GTA Online. So with that explanation being said, we can go ahead and start off 2013 of GTA Online and pretty much just go all the way up to 2024, which is right now, to the Agents of Sabotage, and just see how vehicles have changed overall. Now 2013 I pretty much already described. There wasn't a whole lot added either. Some vehicles, again, from GTA 4 to GTA Online or GTA 5, however you want to think about it, they were in the game. There really isn't a whole lot to talk about. So let's skip straight to 2014 and begin this journey. Now, when it comes to this year, there really wasn't too much of a change, 1 year afterwards, but I quickly want to touch up on the Dubsta 6x6. Now, this might have not been noticed by a lot of people, but this was one of the first vehicles in the game to have realistic suspension. You can really notice this thing. When it hits the ground, it kind of pops up in the air a little bit, because it has good suspension on it. When you drive over, like, hills, bumps, whatever it may be, you can really see that suspension putting in some work. So this year was huge for GTA Online, having an update that pretty much revived the game being the highest update. And they even had brought Next Gen to GTA Online, which now was Last Gen. Next Gen was Xbox One and PS4 respectively, and that had brought first person. You can now see like the actual evolution of the interiors of vehicles. You can take one from like 2013 where you had your fast food drink, and nowadays where you have all your different electronics in the front, which it isn't super realistic yet. I'm assuming GTA 6 of course is going to enhance that a lot more, actually having realistic interiors, but you can still see the differences. Now with this update, it brought the Vapid Guardian. This was pretty similar to the Dubsta 6x6. It too had realistic suspension, and I always have to bring this up that this truck was way ahead of its time. And the Insurgent was also added alongside the Vapid Guardian. There's something really strange about this vehicle. When you're in the air, it rotates very quickly since you can control your vehicle in the air. I know my friend knows why that is, but I can't remember for the life of me why this thing turns so fast in the air. It could be that it's really bottom heavy or top heavy. I'm not really sure, but there's not really many vehicles that have this weird gimmick with them. So the Insurgent, I feel like I just have to, well, talk about it because it's kind of interesting that it does that. Now talking about the aircraft real quick, since I said I would touch up on these, we also got the Hydra this year, being the first VTOL aircraft in the game. Now if you were to use this jet and the Raiju, which is very new, right next to each other, you can definitely see that the Hydra struggles a lot more with its hover mode ability. When you go into hover mode after jet mode, it kind of glides for a little bit longer, and it's kind of hard to handle it in the air, whereas the Raiju came out, turn on hover mode, and it literally almost stops in a dime, and you can perfectly control it. So when it was added, of course, the Hydra was not the best it could be. It was brand new. This was probably the first time them ever doing VTOL mode, and I can't blame them. The Hydra was still one of the best jets in the game at the time, of course, and it still set the foundation for a lot of aircraft moving forward. Of course, there were still some more vehicles added. The Armored Kuruma. Still to this day, this vehicle has the highest bullet-resistant windows in the entire game, and there is not a single vehicle that can match it in bullet protection. Still a great vehicle that has been added, what, like 9 years ago at this point? Almost 10? Now I want to quickly touch up on the Lectro as well. This was a bike added into the game, and it added what is called Curse Boost. This is essentially just, well, a boost that some vehicles have. Your screen will go green for a second, and I don't really want to talk about that too much because only 8 vehicles really have it. So if I remember later in the video, I'll touch upon it again when in the vehicle that actually matters. I'll go a little bit more in detail with it. Now on to another update this year. I think it was Ill-Gotten Gains Part 2. The T20 had released. At the time, one of the best vehicles in the game, and it was the first one to have active aero. So when you go fast enough, you'll see that the spoiler in the back raises up. pretty damn cool in my opinion. And still, I really love the T20. I'm sure most of you out there do. Unfortunately, it gets beaten by a lot of vehicles today, but hey, still set the foundation of active aero, which is pretty damn cool in my opinion. Now, we still got some more updates this year. It's time for lowriders. I can say with certainty this update added a much needed visual change to the vehicles. Now, any vehicle that was on the Benny Motorsworks website can now get hydraulics. These specific vehicles that were added can't. Later on, we'll get some more vehicles added to Benny's that don't get hydraulics, but alongside the hydraulics, any of these vehicles that can be brought into Benny's also had a lot more modifications than vehicles previous. And these modifications are also very unique. Now, after all of this, we're still in 2015, and I wanted to quickly touch up on the Frankenstein. Now, say what you want to say, but this vehicle has a one-of-one sound, one of the best sounding vehicles in the whole game, and I'm saying this because not many vehicles get their own sound. Rockstar just occasionally uses the very generic sound that other cars might have, and if you say that it's not a one-of-one sound, you're just wrong. I'm sorry to say it, but you're wrong. This car has a one-of-one sound. Now, finally, the last thing that was added this year for vehicles was the armored variants of some existing and new vehicles. Now, these vehicles were not really good. They could survive maybe like 3 rockets and call it a day, and it had a little bit of bulletproof protection on the windows until they broke like after 20 bullets. So they really weren't that good, but still, these were like the first set of armored vehicles added to the game outside of the insurgents and stuff like that. Now, finally, we're on to 2016. And starting off this year, we're going back to the Benny's website, actually. And instead of them adding more lowriders, they actually added 2 sports cars to this website, being the Sultan and the Banshee. Now, with these 2 vehicles, you can convert them into the Sultan RS and the Banshee 900R, respectively, of course. Now, with those conversions, they go from sports cars to supercars, which is, well, a very uncommon thing in the game. I think there's other cars that can do that conversion, but I might be wrong about that. So in their own way, they're very unique vehicles. Now, alongside that, they of course added some more lowriders. There was an entire another lowrider update, and I can't say much here since I already talked about them, but they did add some existing vehicles to that website, and they were pretty damn cool in my opinion. And with this year adding the first businesses to the game, there wasn't anything crazy added in terms of vehicles. So here are just some that were added that, whether or not they had like some graphical changes, or just some cool features, or they were just cool vehicles in general, here they are. The Reaper, the FMJ, the X80 Proto, and the 811. That was pretty much it. Now, we also got another vehicle-focused update this year as well, being Cunning Stunts. This added the Trophy Truck and the Desert Raid, both being insanely good at off-roading and just really good at what their purpose is. Alongside those 2 vehicles, we also got the Contender. This vehicle was put in the SUV class instead of the off-road class because I believe if it was in the off-road class, it would be way too overpowered. So naturally, it became really good in the SUV class since it is just a good vehicle overall. And let's quickly talk about the BF Raptor, a 3-wheeled car in the game, which has 1 wheel in the back, 2 in the front. Other than that, it is still a pretty bad vehicle. And lastly, this year, we got Import and Export. Definitely a great update when it comes to the vehicle side of things, because we now got what are called special vehicles. And these can only be stored in the new vehicle warehouse during the time. Now, these vehicles were as followed. The Phantom Wedge, having a really huge wedge on the front that could push vehicles out of the way. Pretty useful. With the Ruiner 2000, this was just jam-packed with everything. Rockets, machine guns that had a jump, a parachute even, and it had stun doors. With the Blazer Aqua, an amphibious ATV, and it was just garbage. The Ramp Buggy, this could ramp cars off of it, and it was pretty damn fun to use. The Technical Aqua, I didn't talk about the Technical before, but this is an amphibious version of the Technical. It's not good. We had the Wastelander, which is a very cool vehicle in my opinion, but you really can't use it for what its purpose is intended. We also got the Rocket Voltic, being the first rocket car in the entire game, but again, it's not really good. And finally, we had the Armored Boxville. It may have armor in its name, but it actually can't survive any rockets, surprisingly. And to close off this year, we got more Benny's vehicles, all of which either being sports cars or supercars. The LG Retro Custom, one of the fan favorites in this game. We got the Nero, I believe being the first supercar added to Benny's. The Comet Retro Custom, which looks very nice. The Itali GTB being the second supercar added to Benny's. And then the Spectre, very underrated car in the game. The wide body's perfect, and I love the car a lot. Now, 2017 had one of the best starts to any year with gun running, of course. This added the bunker alongside an insane amount of new vehicles, and I mean a lot. Now, I don't want to talk about each one, so here are some of the notable ones. First up, we had the MOC Cab, Mobile Operations Center. This was the semi of the actual MOC trailer itself, and this is the strongest vehicle in the entire game. I think it can survive up to 100 rockets. We have the anti-aircraft trailer, which can be equipped with one of the best weapons in the entire game, the flat cannon. The APC, which is just an amphibious tank. I don't got much to say there. The half-track, which is, again, a vehicle that can have one of the strongest weapons equipped to it, if you can use it right, and of course it's both a truck and a tank at the same time. With the Oppressor, which is a gliding motorcycle. Don't get this mixed up with the Oppressor Mark II. Very different vehicles. With the Night Shark, one of the best vehicles at protecting you, and also had very good speed. And we also got an aircraft focus update later this year as well. First up, we have the Havoc, which is the smallest helicopter in the game. The LF-22 Starling, which is the only plane that flies with a booster. We have the Rogue, which is one of the fastest aircraft in the game, even knowing it has a propeller as its way of motion. We have the Tula, which is a very terrible VTOL aircraft, and also is amphibious. The Ultralight, I don't think I need to say much here. Just a very unique aircraft in the game, I guess you could say that. The RM-10 Bombushka, which is a very large plane, and it's just completely useless. We also got the Pyro, which was at the time one of the fastest aircraft in the game, and it was a 2-seater fighter jet, but it didn't really have anything going for it outside of that. The Seabreeze, which is an amphibious aircraft. The FH-1 Hunter. This thing just has too many weapons on it, one of the best helicopters in the game if you can use it right. Now, the aircraft may have sound impressive, but they are not useful, or they're very situational. That's kind of like the problem we had here in this update. But in the mix of all of that, we had gotten one of the best ground vehicles in the game as well, the Vigilante. This is equipped with the best homing missiles in the entire game. Really terrible machine guns, of course. It is a heavy vehicle with a booster, so NPCs really aren't a problem with this thing. It doesn't count as a special vehicle either, so you can use it in heists, missions, free roam, whatever you want to do with it, you can use it there. Now, similar to 2016, there's still more to cover in this year. The last update we got was the Doomsday Heist. To quickly get this out of the way, there was some vehicles that had the ability to get machine guns that didn't really make a whole lot of sense to have them, but now let's get into the juice. First, we got the Akula. This is a helicopter that had stealth mode where you can permanently go off the radar from anybody on the map. The trade-off to that is you cannot use any of its weapons. We also got the Chernobog. You would think this is heavily armored, but you'd be mistaken. It can barely survive any rockets, but its whole thing is that the missile launcher on the back has a very long range, so it's good for taking down jets in the air. The TM-02 Konjali, arguably the best ground vehicle in the entire game to fight other players with because it has a rail cannon, a machine gun, 2 grenade launchers, and proximity mines. They also added a mobile property after the MOC being the Avenger. I don't have a whole lot to say about this. The Deluxo being the DeLorean, and it was the first vehicle in the game that can both fly and drive at the same time. I know the Oppressor technically counts, but that doesn't really fly, it more glides than anything. We also got the first submarine car in the game being the Stromberg. And lastly, we got the jetpack being the Thruster. Now, this is one hell of a year for GTA Online in terms of vehicles, the evolution of them, all that stuff. But with all good things, there's always something bad to come from it. So that's where 2018 comes along. So let's start off with After Hours. Every time I talk about this update, it is just very depressing. The Oppressor Mark II was added to the game, and this became the thing everyone hated unless you were a user of the vehicle. When it was released, it had some of the best tracking homing missiles in the entire game. These would almost always hit their targets, and it was just terrible to fight this thing because it was really tiny in the air as well, and it was a motorcycle. So, I mean, it was like very one-sided here. If you didn't play GTA Online when it was around, just know that it was a fucking menace. All right, that's all you gotta know. Now, after that update, we also got Arena War. This took existing vehicles and new vehicles in the game and added crazy modifications to them, and you could use them in a demolition derby of sorts. Rockstar didn't really add a whole lot to it. It was kind of disappointing, and you really would just use these for the fun of it in free roam. So after going through Hell Week in 2018, it was time for a very nice treat in 2019. Now, this brought the Diamond Casino and many vehicles to the game. But we also got the Diamond Casino Heist at the same time as Diamond Casino, a little bit afterward, but they're pretty much the same update if you really think about it. We also got F1 cars added to the game. These had way more realistic downforce, and if you were to lose a spoiler or a splitter or anything, their traction and overall performance would just be worse. So I found that to be really cool. They don't fit into the game too well since it's, well, Grand Theft Auto, not Formula 1, but I still appreciate Rockstar adding these to the game. Now, I may get excited over having a lot of money in this game, but this update was kinda buns for the vehicle side of things. Out of everything that was added, there was 2 notable vehicles. The Sparrow, very good helicopter, you can spawn it right next to you whenever you want, and the Toreador, another underwater submarine car that replaces Stromberg. It also has boost, really good tracking home missiles, machine guns, and it's just a great car overall. And outside of that, 2020 really didn't have a whole lot to add. This year was very strong for the vehicle portion of the game, since the first update during this year was focused completely around vehicles. We got the Tuners update. The vehicles, of course, looked very nice. Some vehicles added that we wanted for a very long time in the game. But there wasn't anything like crazy that was added. It was actually something that was in the interaction menu, what is called stancing your car. If you keep your vehicles normal, it performs like normal, but then if you use the stance option, it'll give your vehicles more speed at the cost of losing a lot of your handling. You would use stance more for like making your car look better, or you really could use it for the speed portion if you want, if your car handles good enough, but from my experience, don't use stance for a race. It is terrible. And surprisingly, we got another great update this year, the contract. In this update, we got what is called a Money Tech, and not every vehicle gets this unless specified by the game, kind of similar to the Tuners update. Now, in your agency, you can apply armor, missile lock-on jammers, or an RC controller to the cars that allow the Money Tech on them. What makes this significant is that for a long time, people that grinded money in this game didn't really have a way to combat griefers, but now we got that. We got missile lock-on jammers so they can't, mess with us or anything like that. You also apply armor to your cars so they don't blow up in one rocket, and it was just overall amazing. Now, towards the beginning of 2022, the newest generation of consoles, being PS5 and Xbox Series X and S, got HSW. Now, this gave some existing cars in the game and newer cars in the game an upgrade that made them ridiculously fast, kind of, making them more realistic in terms of speed, since some cars max out at a speed that doesn't make sense. Now, that's all I really have to say about this update, because I don't own a console myself, so I can't really give more of a description on this, but other than that, vehicles got the choice to have a wide body on them too. Now, if there was something I can add in 2023 towards vehicles, I really wish I could, but unfortunately, it's the complete opposite. We all know what's going on here. During this year, there was over 200 vehicles removed from the in-game websites, and you can no longer purchase them. They're still in the game. If you own them, you can still have them in your garage, but you can't purchase them anymore unless they appear in the dealerships every week. I mean, they added the Raiju alongside that in the game. When I was talking about the Hydra earlier, it's just a really good jet overall, but it doesn't really make up for what they did, and I did it. But later this year, they did add the Chop Shop, and it was okay. We now could own police cars for the first time in GTA Online, which is kind of ridiculous. Of course, every single one of them is like anywhere from 3 to 5 million, which is overpriced for a police car, but hey, what can you do? I believe they also added drifting in this update. I'm not sure if it was this one or earlier or later, whatever. I couldn't really find it. But some cars that are existing and I believe new, you could add drift tuning to them, and it's just a really arcadey feel. The cars aren't actually drifting, they're just sliding around. It's not really the same as drifting, but hey, what can you do? The 2024 obviously isn't quite done with the update cycle. We still have, Agents of Sabotage releasing as I speak of this. But there are two things I can add this year. One, we're now able to own, more police cars. A lot of money down the drain. And two, Rockstar is adding more realism to vehicles and adding way more realistic vehicles to the game. So I appreciate that. It obviously shows that GTA 6 is going to be very realistic. But that's all I really have to say for 2024. So that's every year leading up to now, from 2013 to 2025 nearly, of talking about the evolution of vehicles. And what can we take out of this? Well, I don't really know, I'll be honest. I mean, vehicles kind of changed, obviously. They don't take damage, but they're a lot more realistic. We're getting more options to choose from. GTA Online, I mean, you can kind of see the progression a little bit. In terms of, the vehicles actually changing, not really, unless you're counting, weapons and stuff like that. There really wasn't a massive change from 2013 to 2025. We're going to have to wait for GTA 6 to really give us an answer to that, because obviously that game is probably going to have, your car's catching on fire if you don't fucking repair it or something like that. You actually have to fill up your gas, which would be a terrible mechanic, but hey, we'll find out in GTA 6, so I hope you guys enjoyed. Let me know what your favorite year of GTA Online was that changed vehicles for the better, and I'll catch you guys later. Peace out, everybody. I love every single one of you.